Just make sure I'm not getting any emails. Hi, Christopher. We haven't officially kicked off yet. Do you want to do a mic check really quick? I saw you just come in.
Yes, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
All right, perfect. It does not let me start my video though.
Okay, Albert will get you situated there.
Sounds good. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, everyone does have co-host privileges, so that will allow you to turn on your camera and off your camera, whenever you want to.
Perfect. Works now. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I was going to give it just a minute or two here. We did get notification from a couple of our commission offices that they would be joining today. So I just want to give them just a minute before we officially get started. And checking my Teams. And Albert, are you showing nobody in the lobby?
That is correct. I'm showing no attendees.
Okay, I've got a couple of folks from my team that said that they are waiting in the lobby, but it just says that the meeting will start soon.
I don't know if this makes any difference. I'm getting a message that says you are in a practice session, and then a little button that says start webinar. I don't.
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing.
Okay, I do not see the start webinar button.
I do. I see the start webinar button.
Okay, can you hit that? See?
Yeah.
We're gonna hit all the buttons, Albert.
Okay, here they
There we
come.
go.
I didn't know that was my role. Sorry, guys. Kind of takes your breath away, huh, Mahalia? You're like, where are all the people?
I figured it was just something simple. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of a late start here. Welcome. We were about to start without everybody, and I was like, wait a minute. I know we've got some folks joining us. So we'll give everybody about 10 seconds just to filter in here, and we will get started.
Okay, on my end, Albert, it's asking me if I want to allow people to talk. Should I say yes to all the people that should be in today's panel group?
On that end, all the panelists will have the ability to mute and unmute and turn on and off their cameras. The attendees would, once you scroll to them, it would, you would have to give them individual permission to allow to talk.
Okay, because like on here, Mahalia, I see Bryant Owens. I should allow to talk, right?
Yeah, when,
Okay, I'm just gonna go through it. I got it.
Yeah.
okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I know everybody's kind of gearing up for the holidays, and we were able to squeak one more in our final quarter 4 advisory committee meeting in for 2022. So we're going to close it out here with a really great agenda today. So thanks again for just joining us. Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. For those of you that are joining us, we will have all the materials once we make them ADA and accessible. We will get them online and you can follow them and find them on the link there. If you just Google TWC AEL Advisory Committee, all the materials and as well as the transcripts will be posted there after the meeting from today. As always, I always like to give a little breath here at the beginning of our meetings to our commission offices. And I think we have several folks that are joining us today. But before we get started, I just want to briefly go over today's agenda. So I will do the TWC AEL updates as I always do. A few minutes. It's always a good time, I think, in December to take a look back at everything that we've accomplished over the last year. And we've had some really great advisory committee meetings, some great discussions, some great presentations over the last year. So I'll be taking a little bit of a walk down memory lane in my comments for today. And it's also just a good timing because our advisory committee members are really gearing up to bring forward final recommendations to the commission as we do every year. So after that, we'll move on to the committee business discussion items. We have 2 guest speakers with us today, Adrian Lopez from the Workforce Solutions Alamo, as well as Christopher, and I don't want to ruin your name, I'm gonna say Mamin. Hopefully that's right.
Yeah, no worries.
Perfect. And our newest advisory committee member, Leslie Cantu, is going to be introducing both of those. So that is our agenda for today. Next slide. So before we get started, I wanted to just reach out and say, Chairman, are you on with us today?
I am.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. My camera's not on. I'm not sure exactly why. So, but I'm here. Thanks, everybody. I know a lot of volunteer effort goes into this. Appreciate everything you're doing. These are pretty important topics for us right now. And looking forward to hearing some of the speakers in today's meeting. I just got from there I am.
Hey, I see you.
Anyway, thanks everybody for all you're doing. These are pretty critical issues for us right now. Lots going on in the state. We need to make sure that all parts of the state can participate in the economic growth that we're seeing. And I think a lot of the work that you guys are doing are really going to help us do that. Thanks so much for let me say a few words. Looking forward to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you so much for joining us, Chairman Daniel. I know you are a very busy guy.
Okay.
All right, next, Commissioner representing labor. I don't think Commissioner Alvarez was able to join us today, but do we have a representative from his office here? I believe.
Hi, Brent Williams. I'm
Hi, Brent.
attorney in Commissioner Alvarez's office.
Hi,
Can you hear
Brent.
me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Good. Let's see. I'm getting. Okay.
Well, we could hear you. Now I can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, you're back. Hey, Brent, now I can see you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, Commissioner Alvarez was not going to be able to make the meeting today. I don't have a lot of remarks. I just wanted to say that Commissioner Alvarez thanks all the committee members for all the hard work they've done. I know that the commissioner is very proud of the time of all the work that's been done on this committee to improve education and employment opportunities for Texans, and he's gratified that the AL program is in the state it is at the time that he's leaving office. So he just wanted to give his thanks.
Perfect. Yes, I did let let the advisory committee members know in our pre-call of Commissioner Alvarez's announcement. So they are aware. And thank you so much, Brent, for coming on and saying a few words on his behalf. I know he's probably got a lot going on these last couple of days and the last week leading up to his departure. Yeah. So thank you so much. We also have, I think, a representative from Commissioner Demerson's office. Brian, are you on? I think I saw you on a little earlier.
I am here.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I don't know. Okay, join as a panelist. Okay. So,
And we can hear you. Can you hear us, Brian?
All right, Brian, you should be able to unmute and turn on your camera now.
okay. Well, you would think after this amount of time that I would have learned how to use Zoom by now, but we'll just go without the video for now, and it's technical difficulties on my end. So, but Commissioner's on travel today. He's in Houston at a workforce announcement, but he sends his thanks, of course, and looks forward to getting to know the new members that have been appointed. Thank you for volunteering to serve, and we look forward to working more with you over the next year. So thank you for that. Yesterday, commissioners just approved the strategic plan progress report. And so there's some good statistics in there about the overall progress of the AL program. And it really shows that we're serving more individuals than we've ever served before. So it's got some good stuff in there. And so we're continuing to dive into that report and look through that. Of course, there's always room to serve more, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. So we're proud of this committee influence on that report and helping to move the progress forward. So last week we had our annual conference in Dallas, and Commissioner Demerson had a super session, is what they call it, workshop, and maybe some of y'all attended. I'm not sure who was all able to attend, but the overall conference was a great success. A lot of workshops, and our super session was about the metaverse and how a lot of things are moving to the metaverse, online training, online classes. Of course, we've all experienced some of that, but this is a whole nother level of engagement through the virtual world. So anyway, some good stuff, and I'll that's all I have for now, and look forward to hearing the presentations today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining, Brian. We appreciate it. And even though we didn't plan it, you teed me up really well for my talking points. So big thanks for that. Well, thank you so much for all the offices that are joining, and to the chairman. We've got, I think, some really good presentations for today. And then, of course, this is the committee's last opportunity to kind of discuss some things related to kind of more formal recommendations that they'll bring forward to the commission in January, hopefully. So it's going to be a good one, as always. Next slide. So a couple updates from me. Brian couldn't have teed me up any better. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Yesterday, we brought forward our AEL Strategic Plan Progress Report to the Commission for approval. And this is something that we bring forward. It has to be submitted to both the TWIC, the governor, and the legislative budget board by December 31st of every even numbered year. So it's a great opportunity for me. I actually really enjoy writing these, and I get great support from all of my staff in writing these. And it's a good opportunity for us to kind of look back at everything that we've really done and accomplished over the prior 2 years, and kind of culminate that all into a document that we can then submit, and we also, of course, make public. So it's a great reference point, included amongst all the things in there. I think it's about 20 pages long, but it's going to include anything that the state has really done, I think, to be responsive to our AEL strategic plan. So the commission approved the AEL strategic plan, I believe, back in August of 2021, and we've done a lot since the implementation of this new plan that will run through 2026. In the progress report, it's really going to specifically focus on a couple of key things. It's going to have some commission approved state leadership projects that we deployed. Those state leadership projects support goals and objectives that we have outlined in our strategic plan, as well as any state level priorities to address, specific commission initiatives like the Middle Skills Initiative or Family Math Literacy or employer engagement projects. It will also outline any policy or programmatic changes that we implemented to support a better overall AEL system. You're going to see some information in there on any coordination efforts that we have done both internally within our agency, through other TWC departments, or even across divisions, just to make the work that we do a little bit more efficient and timely, as well as any coordinated efforts that we've done with other state agencies, such as the Texas Education Agency or the Higher Education Coordinating Board. You'll also see kind of peppered throughout initiatives that we believe were responsive to the last legislative session. So big topics in the last legislative session in regards to digital literacy, and kind of what Brian was speaking to is moving things into the metaverse, which is providing kind of distance and remote learning expansion projects for us. So you'll see all of those kind of peppered throughout the document. I did provide this to all of our AEL advisory committee members, so they can kind of see some of the things that we've accomplished just over the last couple of years here. Next slide. So one of the things, and I had brought this up before in my opening remarks, is our AEL advisory committee is sort of responsible for bringing forward and advising the commission on a couple of key things. One of them, or a couple of them, have to do with the development of policy and program priorities that support the development of an educated and skilled workforce, the development of statewide curriculum guidelines and standards for adult ed here in Texas, just to make sure that we have a balance of both education and technical and workforce skills development. Strategies for improving student transition to post-secondary education and career and technical education training, as well as a centralized system for collecting and tracking all this data that we collect, and so that we could really use that to help us to have better outcomes and better performance under our program. Some other things the committee can consider is just the exploration of potential partnerships with entities in the nonprofit business communities. We've had a couple of discussions over the past year through the advisory committee meetings, and brought in several organizations that fit into that, and how we could potentially partner with entities to kind of leverage funds as well as resources that we have here in Texas through both funded AEL, TWC funded AEL projects, as well as non-funded projects across the state. And then any other things that the committee may feel that the commission would set as a priority for the adult education here in Texas. Now, with that in mind, next slide. I think it's good to kind of look back and see what previous recommendations have been brought forward. So last year, back in 2021, the advisory committee, and we have several new members now. We have several folks that left last year. We've got several new members that have come in. So I think it's kind of good to look back and say, what did the committee bring forward last year for the commission to consider? And here are just a couple of kind of key points I wanted to bring up. One was increasing the awareness of AEL opportunities and the potential for partnerships by promoting and marketing AEL efforts. They also said establish and support a collaborative projects between employers, AEL providers, particularly focusing on those pre-employment and soft skill training opportunities, supporting multi-agency coordination, the elimination of duplication, and also those braided funds and leveraging the funds so that we could serve particularly special populations here in Texas. Developing and deploying AEL learning platform that is culturally relevant and targeted toward the specific needs of adult learners. So as we all know, adult learners learn very differently than our K through 12 folks. And last, but certainly not least, providing digital literacy training and technical support to both our AEL instructors across the state through some online environments. So those were the recommendations that the committee brought forward last year. Next slide. And so to that end, I think it's important, at least from my position here at TWC, that I kind of talk about TWC's responsiveness to those recommendations. So here are just a couple of things, definitely not all. You can look at the AEL progress report and probably get a lot more detail about all of the things that we've done. But I think some of these kind of speak to last year's recommendations. So how were we kind of responsive to that? Well, we launched several marketing campaigns in coordination with the Texas Education Agency. Those of you, I think all of our members are aware that we launched a couple of years ago a high school equivalency subsidy program here at TWC with the support of our partners at TEA. They are funding this project and we are doing the administrative implementation of it. And so we have coordinated with them on several marketing campaigns over the last couple of years, reaching out to individuals who lack just one high school equivalency test so that they can earn a credential. I think the last one we did was about 15,000 people. We sent out emails, we sent out, electronic flyers kind of saying, hey, this program is available, funding is available, come take that last test and get that credential. We've also done the same by looking at Work in Texas and all the registrants that we have in there that may not have a high school diploma or an equivalent, and reaching out to them and letting them know about adult education and literacy services, as well as, our subsidy program. And then, of course, myself, my staff, we do numerous AEL 101s, both for employers. We really coordinate across our agency in terms of different divisions within our agency to get a foot in the door and kind of go out there and say, hey, this is how we can support apprenticeship. This is how we can support employers. So those are always fun. And I really love being able to kind of get out there and talk about the work that we do in adult ed. We also launched an employer engagement initiative. The commission approved a $1.4 million employer engagement initiative, which we put out through an RFA and awarded 3 grants for that. We're super excited about the work that's happening in that space and how we're supporting workplace literacy for incumbent workers and really working with employers to kind of say, what do you need from us? So it's very tailored to their needs, which I think is important. And so it's going above and beyond sort of that traditional ESL or traditional high school equivalency work that we do, frequently and often, but really diving down into what specific employers' needs are. And then we will get some good curriculum from that, and we will get some good best practices coming out of that initiative, which we will then share with all of the AEL providers across the state for implementation. We also have a curriculum that is being developed specifically for construction trades. This will be something that will also be shared statewide with all of our AEL providers, so that they, as they're developing integrated education and training programs specifically focused on those construction trades, that we have some curriculum out there to help to support them in those local lesson plan development, curriculum development for those. We launched our statewide virtual high school diploma or high school equivalency providers here in Texas. We have two. One is with the University of Texas at Austin, and the other is with Texas Tech University. We are in the throes of deep implementation on both of those, and it's actually really exciting. I think we're going to learn a lot from both of those providers and those initiatives. And this will be something that will be supported both through that special initiative, but also with our AEL provider system statewide. So students can be co-enrolled, and hopefully this will help to bring more learners that maybe weren't able to access those traditional brick and mortar opportunities in their local communities through an online, 100% online option. So I'll be happy to bring forward and bring back some updates for those two projects to the committee members here in the near future. We also created a distance education professional development center, and it's really focused on all things related to educational technology, digital literacy, and education. So this is another initiative that the commission approved. Under that specific grant, we have developed a distance learning call center. It's open 7 days a week for both students and instructors. I think we learned a lot during the pandemic when we tried to transition our classes to remote or virtual options. And what we learned is that both our instructors and our students I think really needed to have an option where it's like, hey, I can't connect to Zoom. Look at the things we were dealing with today. So, you know, if there was an issue, they can literally call someone on the phone and say, hey, I'm having this trouble and I don't want that technical issue to prevent me from being able to access services. So it's a great initiative, and I'm really appreciative to the commission for approving these types of state leadership projects, because it helps us to be really innovative and it helps us do things that, you know, quite frankly, just aren't happening other places in the country. Through that project, we also have launched a distance learning technology integration symposium. So annually we'll be hosting a symposium, and it's going to bring in all of our instructors, administrators from across the states, our distance education leads, which we require in our grants, and they get to come in and really look at best practices, what is new and fresh on the market to help support digital literacy and fluency in the classroom. So it's a very cool little symposium. We got a really great show this year when we kicked it off, and it'll be something that we continue to do every year under that grant. And last but certainly not least was the updating of our content standards to include digital literacy and fluency in our actual content standards. So our providers have the flexibility to create their own curriculum at the local level. However, we create content standards that they have to really abide by when they're developing that local curriculum. So this is something that we've been working on, and I think we're going to officially launch in the spring in terms of the implementation of this. And it just speaks to all the sort of legislative action from the last time around. It probably will maybe come up in this legislative session as well, but it really is about just building a digitally literate workforce here in Texas. So we wanted to make sure we were doing some good work in that space. So I know that's a lot of information, but that's kind of the 10-minute rundown, right, of all the things that we've been doing in adult ed here over the last year and a half. Next slide. So there's also just been a lot of things happening in the workforce development space as well. And I wanted to kick it over to our AEL presiding officer, Steve Banta, who's going to lead us into our AEL committee discussion for today. And then I think he's going to hand it over to Leslie to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Mahalia. I think there's a slide on roll call. Is that next? Yes. Rita Hernandez is not going to be with us today. She's come down with some serious food poisoning, so she's getting better. Janine, are you with us?
I am here and present.
Thank you. And Brenda Schofield. Can you
I'm
announce
here. I'm here.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And Leslie Cantu.
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Wonderful. Next slide, please. Leslie has only been with us for a month, but she came to the first meeting that we had. We were looking for ideas on specific goals and action items that we could address. And she brought to us 2 initiatives that are going on in San Antonio that sounded really good to the committee and had a lot of potential to impact AEL. So Leslie, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce these 2 subjects and gentlemen.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. Well, first I'm going to introduce Adrienne Lopez. I have had the pleasure of working with Adrienne for the last 6 years. I first met Adrienne when I joined the board of Workforce Solutions Alamo, and working very closely with Adrienne in his most recent role of the CEO for Workforce Solutions Alamo. Adrienne Lopez has over 25 years of community and economic development experience. He has dedicated his career to public service, working in city, county, council of governments, nonprofits, a housing authority, and as the CEO for Workforce Solutions Alamo. His background includes grant management, infrastructure development, housing, social services, workforce, commercial revitalization, administering incentive programs, and building collaborations. His work includes some nationally recognized programs. Most recently, Adrienne has led the workforce response to effects of the pandemic, where the Alamo region witnessed over 330,000 job losses. In addition to his career, he's held many civic positions to serve children and families. Adrienne holds a bachelor's in sociology and political science from St. Mary's University. And I think you'll be very excited to hear, more information about this innovative approach that he's developed to serving clients with the no wrong door model. So we'll be hearing from Adrienne shortly, and very excited that he was able to join us today. I'd also like to introduce you to Christopher Mayman. I have had the pleasure of working with Christopher in 2 different capacities. One, he serves on the board of directors for our Texas Fame chapter here in San Antonio, as well as I worked with him on our talent pipeline management initiative with the manufacturing industry. So I'm excited to be able to introduce you to Christopher. As Workforce Development Director of SA Works, Christopher leads employer engagement to promote alignment across the San Antonio region's workforce development ecosystem. In his role, Christopher manages Greater SATX's partnership as lead employer engagement agency for the City of San Antonio's Ready to Work program, a $200 million taxpayer-funded investment in the region's workforce. Additionally, Christopher leads the implementation of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's talent pipeline management process for the construction, finance, healthcare, and bioscience, IT and cybersecurity, and manufacturing industries to develop short and long-term talent pipeline solutions with area training providers to meet our region's workforce needs. Through these efforts, Christopher regularly partners with regional workforce agencies to create best practices for workplace readiness, awareness, and placement efforts. Before joining Greater SATX, Christopher served as a special projects consultant with the City Education Partners, a nonprofit focused on expanding innovative and equity-focused access to public education in San Antonio's urban core. He is an alumnus of the 2018 San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Alexander Briceño's Leadership Development Program. Christopher currently serves on the board of Texas Fame, Move Texas, and is a member of the Citizens Bond Advisory Committee for Northeast ISD. Christopher attended Trinity University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and holds a Master of Business Administration from the University of Houston. I also feel that this committee will be very intrigued to learn about the work that he's doing with Ready to Work and their talent pipeline initiative. So I'm excited to have both these gentlemen join us today.
Thank you, Leslie. Next slide. Mr. Lopez, it's all yours.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Leslie, Madam Chair. I do have the pleasure of working with Leslie, as she mentioned. Nice photo of me. That looks really good. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in regards to Ready to Work. We're pretty, fortunate to actually be in a city that has been very progressive and a public that has approved this major initiative associated with workforce. So next slide, please. So just to give you some context and some background on what the Ready to Work program is, Ready to Work is actually funded by a 1/8 cent sales tax, and the tax collected that will be collected actually through about December of 2025. Most communities throughout Texas opt to have voter initiatives to take a 1/8 cent sales tax to fund things like park space or things like economic development efforts and those things. And so the voters of San Antonio in November of 2020 actually voted to fund this initiative to project about $200 million towards workforce efforts. This is actually a one-of-a-kind program. While other cities, maybe across Texas and across the country, do have similar types of city-funded projects, nothing is actually at the scale of the Ready to Work. So definitely, this is one of a kind. The projected amount of folks to be served is upwards of close to about 30,000 folks, with about 16,000 or so folks that actually are projected to actually graduate and be placed over the years through about 2027. Next slide. So the city actually had funded during the pandemic. The city and the county, actually, Bexar County, had funded a couple of different workforce initiatives. The city had the Train for Jobs program. Bexar County had Bexar County Strong. So Workforce Solutions Alamo actually was a recipient of about an influx of about $30 million that was infused during the height of the pandemic. The Train for Jobs was actually the opportunity to, one, test the waters from the city's perspective to see how they actually could operate a city-run workforce program, but also to set up the context for the city's Ready to Work, right, or the initiative that was actually going to be passed by or considered by the voters of San Antonio. And in that process, Workforce Solutions Alamo, through both Train for Jobs and through Bexar County Strong, largely worked on its own. And we were able to serve a few thousand folks out of those $30 million, and actually had, I think, an upwards of about, probably $60 to $70 million worth of salaries that were created as a means of folks that actually went through the programs and actually graduated. So there was a pretty substantial return on investment in that investment. With Ready to Work, we understood that this program was actually going to be at a much bigger scale, was going to require us to look at how do we look at the ecosystem to improve on that, so that we can actually achieve the scale and the speed that the city of San Antonio voters had required under Ready to Work. And so we brought a number of folks that are part of our community through our nonprofit network, but also through higher ed, through Texas A&M, for example, university located in South San Antonio. And the intent here was a couple of things. First of all, we started meeting with some of these community-based organizations that we already had done some work with, and largely had some relationship with them. and started to talk about, what are the principles that we want to uphold. And so very quickly, we came to the understanding that we wanted to be, one, honest with each other. We wanted to be transparent with each other, and then we wanted to hold each other accountable. Certainly, there's a whole litany of nonprofits in the city of San Antonio. And I think if you were to look at the books, there's probably something like 1,400 nonprofits in San Antonio. But we were very selective about sort of like who we wanted to actually work closely with because of those three principles: honesty, transparency, and accountability. We also wanted to work with agencies that had an established presence and an established great reputation amongst the public. The principle behind that is that we do definitely, at Workforce Solutions Alamo, have 5 career centers that are located in Bexar County, and we have another 11 located to the 13 county region that we serve. But we wanted to extend that because what we saw, what was happening during the pandemic was, and many of you saw that national headlines associated with 100,000 plus people in lines waiting to receive food at the San Antonio Food Bank, right? And thousands of folks going to some of the other types of agencies that we work with closely, whether that was the United Way of San Antonio Bexar County, or the Family Service Association, or YWCA. And so these great organizations were already providing crucial services to our community members and to many of the same clients that we serve, actually have served and even serve today. And so the thought process and the principle behind bringing this consortium together, which we created, right, which is the Alamo Workforce Consortium, was based on, let's just build on the foundation that these existing agencies already have. There's no need for us to, to try to replicate or to try to tell these agencies how to address clients and how to work with clients. Because some of these had developed really great, or actually all of these agencies have developed really great reputations amongst the public, right? The other, and that is based on sort of trust that individuals and families have with those agencies. And we understand that the delivery of services, especially crucial services in a time of crisis, is largely going to be based on trust. And so we brought these organizations together. The other is that some of these organizations had developed particular niches and specialties in relation to special populations. For example, Chrysalis Ministries strictly works with second chance populations. And so their level of understanding that population and their level of capacity with their staff to work closely with not only individuals who are formerly incarcerated or are part of the justice system, but also with their families is probably the best of any organization in the San Antonio region. So it made no sense for us to be able to try to replicate that through Workforce Solutions Alamo. What we said is, why don't we take this great work that Chrysalis is already doing, and let's start to add other components to it. Let's build capacity on the workforce side with these organizations, right? Because many of these great organizations are doing things like individual counseling and family counseling and dealing with barriers to employment for everything from like lack of housing to the need for utility assistance, getting people back to school and getting them trained, or getting them just stabilized, right? But they find it difficult many times to actually get people to the finish line of self-sufficiency. And so that's where we come in as Workforce Solutions Alamo, because that's our level of expertise, utilizing our resources, utilizing the dollars that we get on a consistent basis, either through TWC or DOL, but also through this Ready to Work, right? And so the intent also was to work with these agencies to build capacity, but also to act as a shield between them and the city. And with all due respect to my friends at the city of San Antonio, or other organizations or agencies that we work with, a lot of times the bureaucracy is way too much for these agencies to handle. And so the intent was, let us address all of the bureaucratic processes. Let us address the fiscal impacts of it. Let us address the compliance aspects of it, for all of the organizations. I need you, Chrysalis, YWCA, Family Services, Food Bank, Avance. I just need for you to concentrate on service delivery, right? And so it's based on those principles that we came together and said, yeah, that sounds like a great deal. And so the negotiation, for example, on the contract and all of the things associated from a bureaucratic standpoint, Workforce Solutions Alamo handles that for these agencies. And so the intent here is that ultimately we're going to build a capacity amongst these organizations, and by extension, we're actually going to have workforce, whether we call it that or not. We're actually going to have workforce centers within these agencies, and so that's the framework and the theory behind of bringing together the Alamo Workforce Consortium, is to deal with organizations that already had a really great reputation, that already have a relationship with the public, that have established a point of trust with the public, and that do really great work with individuals and families, and to build capacity. And again, relying on those three principles of honesty, transparency, and accountability. Next slide. And so what resulted from that is that out of the $200 million that is projected to be generated through the Cities Ready to Work, this consortium actually was awarded $100 million to serve approximately about 15,000 clients. The dollars are going to be largely used for tuition, emergency costs, supportive services, all in support of trying to get folks to have or to achieve industry certifications, associates, and bachelors, right? This opportunity, is actually also going to be braided with other funding sources, not only with Workforce Solutions Alamo, but with other funding sources that those organizations actually bring to the table just as well. Having somebody like, for example, a Texas A&M University that has access to millions of dollars for students to actually, find a way to be able to, start and complete their journey in college is actually extremely beneficial. When you look at the data for San Antonio and Bexar County, there's approximately about 200,000+ individuals that started college and had some level of college but didn't finish. And so some of those same folks are the ones that are going to these organizations. Some of those same folks are the ones coming to our workforce centers, right? And so we're utilizing the infrastructure of all of the collective infrastructure of all of the organizations to identify those folks and to work closely hand in hand to be able to, create the pathway for those individuals to, for example, to finish their college career. And so some of the targets associated on the industry side is everything from healthcare to IT, cybersecurity, to education, aerospace, manufacturing. These are all of the major industries and sectors that we support at Workforce Solutions Alamo. You would otherwise not have these organizations like Avance or Chrysalis Ministries or any of those other folks really talking about workforce to their clients. They wouldn't be speaking this type of language about saying, here are the targeted industries that are going to produce thousands of jobs today and will continue to produce jobs in the foreseeable future. Here's what the career pipeline is, or the career pathway rather is. And here's where the entry point is and how you actually can get in there with, for example, just a little bit of training that could last potentially weeks or months, right? Those nonprofits and those organizations never speak in that manner because nobody has ever taught them about sort of what exists within the larger economy. When Leslie was talking about my experience in terms of both working in infrastructure and economic development and community development and working with everything from housing developers to folks building, new construction in a downtown area or whatever it may be, that type of background is what I bring together in terms of sort of that thought process, is that looking at workforce and all these different windows, because workforce does not stand on its own, or it can, but it's not going to be very successful. Workforce intersected with, for example, with a major university like Texas A&M, or workforce intersecting with Avance that works with women and their children that are being taught at a very young age in their child care centers about, how to parent and how to actually, bring up your child or develop your child properly, right? Workforce on top of that is going to produce not only better outcomes associated with that child, but it's going to produce better outcomes associated with that parent, right? So that's the theory, and that's what the whole basis of this is really about, and to bring in economic development and industries into that framework. Next slide. So the whole concept of the no wrong door approach is that, and apologize for this map, it's probably not as clear as I would have liked it to have been. But in any case, Workforce Solutions Alamo and the Alamo Workforce Consortium represent one of the 4 primes that are prime contractors that are part of the Ready to Work program. But what this demonstrates is that there are 19 entry points for all of those primes. Our consortium and what we put together represents 15 of those 19 sites. So we're scattered throughout the city. And so the intent again there is to be able to say, hey, if you're in the downtown area, or if you're on the far west side or the far east side or northwest or south side, we have a place for you to go. And that is not necessarily anything that's revolutionary, but it does sort of, present an innovative approach to how we are outreaching and engaging individuals and how we're bringing workforce services to where people are at. San Antonio is one of those cities that unfortunately, sprawled and grew very large. So our city is actually geographically a very, very large city. Our transportation system is not as efficient and effective as cities like Chicago or New York or LA or some of the other major cities throughout, the US, despite the fact that we're the 7th largest city in the country. And so things like transportation is a major barrier for people to get enrolled into these programs. So this no wrong door approach is actually in response to those major issues that from an infrastructure standpoint, we can't do anything about, because that's out of our purview in terms of what the city and the metro folks do in relation to transportation planning. But what we can do is that we can be responsive to that problem, and that's by leveraging the sites and the organizations that we work with, right? And so the intent again is about leveraging funding and expertise, but also to build a better ecosystem. One of the things that we agreed to as consortium partners is that we weren't going to pursue the money for the sake of pursuing the money. We agreed to principles, and we said whether we get the city money or whether we don't get the city money, we are going to continue to work with each other because we have a true commitment to people that we serve. And part of the issue here is to be responsive, actually, just as well, is that yes, we are the 7th largest city in the US. And we've continued to grow economically, adding thousands of jobs on an annual basis, right? Our manufacturing base, our aerospace, our IT continue to grow, healthcare continues to grow. But what largely has happened is people coming from other parts of Texas or other parts of the country that have taken advantage of those positions. And what the proof of the pudding is in relation to that is that we're still approximately at about 20% a poverty rate in San Antonio. So it doesn't make any sense, right? That you're growing economically, you're actually growing in population, you're bringing thousands of jobs, but you're still boasting 20% poverty rate. What that tells us fundamentally is that we have to deliver workforce services differently, and we have to come up with innovative ways like the Alamo Workforce Consortium to be able to be responsive to that. And so it's about building a better ecosystem so that our organizations that already do great work can build upon that and build capacity amongst workforce. I don't know if that's my last slide or if I got anything else. Next slide. Yes, okay. So thank you very much again for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. Certainly there is this is a big test. I can be one of those CEOs or I can be a workforce board that says, I'm just going to concentrate on the centers that we are responsible for and the dollars that TWC and DOL gives us. But because our board is extremely progressive and they want me to be responsive to the needs of our communities, we pursued this $100 million. We secured $100 million. We secured great partnerships with the organizations that I mentioned. And we're on this journey that potentially could be highly successful or could be a total flop in, you know, in the future. We think that we're going to have a success, and we think we are building the right things to actually to create a better workforce ecosystem. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Lopez, thank you very much. That was a fascinating presentation. And our committee talked a lot about what you're doing, not being aware of what you're doing, but the need for that. So it's really, really good to see somebody actually figuring out how to do it. Thanks again. Mr. Maman.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to Leslie for the invitation and the committee for allowing me to present. Adrian, thanks for giving that background on the work that you're doing and for the impact that you're having in our San Antonio region. We greatly appreciate everything that you and Workforce Solutions Alamo brings to our community, so thank you for that. Again, my name is Christopher Mammon, Workforce Development Director with Greater SATX. So I'll be presenting on talent pipeline management and the efforts that we're doing in our community. I'll give you a little bit of background to start, though, on who Greater SATX is as an organization and some of the other work that we do, too, as well in the San Antonio region. So we can go to the next slide. And then the next slide after that, please. So Greater SATX, for those that aren't familiar, is a 47-year-old organization in the San Antonio region. We used to be known as San Antonio Economic Development Foundation. We rebranded in 2021 to better explain a little bit more of who we are and what we do regionally in the San Antonio area. So we serve San Antonio and 7 surrounding counties, focusing on economic development in our community. So bringing new businesses to town or focusing on business retention and expansion as well is one side of our house. And then we have a second side that's workforce focused, and that's the SA Works name that you've probably heard in the past or will see later on in this presentation too as well. So we are in the middle of a strategic plan initiative and fundraising. So for the next 5 years, we're focused on fundraising $40 million. We're actually about 99.5% of the way there in that fundraising effort. 70% of those funds are going to be coming from the private industry, so employers and organizations in our community, and about 30% of that will be from public funds, so contracts with City of San Antonio, Bexar County, or other government agencies, public agencies. We can go to the next slide. Overall, our mission and our vision is centered around economic mobility in the San Antonio region. So we talk about 3 pillars that will lead us to that, to improving economic mobility in our community. The first one being jobs, and that one's focused on bringing high quality jobs to our region. So we define high quality jobs as ones that have a wage of $50,000 or more a year. So when we go out there and market our community, who we are as San Antonio, or the business landscape and the economic opportunities in our community, we're looking for employers and organizations who have jobs that have wages of $50,000 or more for a majority of their positions. So that's our focus on business recruitment to the San Antonio area. Then the second pillar is people. So that's developing the people that we have here, marketing to people to move to our community, but also improving that economic mobility. Specifically, as Adrian mentioned, the socioeconomic issues in our region are extensive. So we're focused on how we can develop the individuals that we have here in the San Antonio area through new education opportunities, starting at the K-12 level and extending to the incumbent workforce as well. And then we also have a comms team that's focused on place, and that meaning selling San Antonio, who we are as a city, as a community, who we can be, and what we can be for employers that are looking at us. And that also includes talent recruitment too. So we have a new effort, or new efforts on talent recruitment to our region and attracting high quality talent to the jobs that are here or to the jobs that are coming to as well. So really just elevating San Antonio as a community of growth and opportunity. We can go to the next slide. So I'll focus on that on the workforce department, so that SA Works arm of Greater SATX, and go into a little bit of detail of some of the programs that we do, but then transition into that talent pipeline management information. So we have a K-12 focused effort. So we do some high school internships over the summer with all industries in our community, just giving an 8-week opportunity for high school students to get real job experience. So this is beyond copying or getting coffee, but real programs, projects that they can work on with employers is what we stress with those internships. We have job shadows throughout the year where, again, high school students typically can either go on site or virtually. More so during past couple of years, we've moved to virtual for exposure to careers and the employers that are in our community. And then general career awareness events that go along with that. And then there's also extended, we've done new digital badging programs that can build social capital for individuals, get them exposure to resume building, interview processes, just some of those 21st century skills for these high school students. On a yearly basis, these efforts reach about 8,000 students in our community. At the college level, I mentioned it, a talent recruitment and retention effort that we've launched this year is called Alamo Fellows. And this program is focused on existing college students and providing them access and opportunities for internships, mentoring, social capital, community experiences and engagement in the San Antonio region to make sure that they stay in San Antonio once they've graduated. So we have 24 students in the first cohort, and those are first generation college students is the focus for who can be a part of Alamo Fellows, and they need to have a STEM focused career or STEM focused degree program. At that adult and incumbent workforce level, so Adrian mentioned a lot of information about Ready to Work. So Leslie also mentioned before that Greater SATX and SA Works is the lead employer engagement arm of Ready to Work. So in that partnership with the City of San Antonio, we help them do outreach to employers to sign a pledge that we help create to commit to the success of the program in our community, to provide internships, to provide mock interviews, job shadow opportunities for participants who enroll into Ready to Work. So we're doing that in alignment with the City of San Antonio, as well as finding the job openings that are available and matching those up to participants of the Ready to Work program. And one of the initiatives that we've introduced to try to help those efforts is the Talent Pipeline Management Framework. And this is a U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation initiative. It is one that's been implemented throughout the country for years now, and it takes going through a U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation Academy over a year to learn the process of this framework and then introduce it into your community. So we'll go a little bit more detail, but it's building employer collaboratives based on industries to really focus on the collective need of the employers within those industries and highlight and focus on critical roles that are mirrored over multiple employers. And we can go to the next slide, please. And for this, so in alignment with the committee's goals and strategic plan, I've just highlighted a few goals, objectives, and actions that I think our efforts align with what the committee is trying to focus on and achieve, and then where we and our efforts may overlap in the San Antonio region. So goal 1, objective 3, action 2, improve workplace readiness through enhanced employer engagement. The second one, or goal 2, improve workplace readiness through industry associations and workforce agency engagement, and identify opportunities to reach hidden workforce. Hidden workforce for us being individuals who may be justice involved, individuals with disabilities, women in the workforce. So some of these segments of the workforce population that are underserved and have a great opportunity to expand in our region. And then the goal 3, objective 2, action 3, create and distribute career pathways that help better inform participants and align industry needs. So as I go through the presentation, just remember some of these goals and some of the work that the committee is focused on, and you can see how they align with our efforts. So we'll go to the next slide. I'll get into a little bit more of the how of TPM in a bit, but this is the why of talent pipeline management. So for our community, we wanted to make sure we brought an initiative that was employer-led. So we serve as the facilitators, but the employers outline what the collaborative is really going to do, what the goals are going to be, what the deliverables will be. And with us as the facilitators and helping them along the way, making the connections and doing some of the behind the scenes work in assistance with that. Talent pipeline management is also seen as if you reference like a supply chain management, that's what talent pipeline management is serving a role of. And in that role, the employers are the end customer. So we'll get into a little bit more detail about that, but just have that mindset. But the initiative and the framework is very structured, but also agile. So there are 6 strategies that are outlined within the framework, but each collaborative is different and is going to be different in different communities. And again, it's dependent on that employer-led initiative. One of the biggest benefits of talent pipeline management is getting into the data. So oftentimes, education providers, training providers, workforce agencies make decisions based around public data, so LMI data, or ones from organizations like MC, Lightcast, and those are the decisions that are made. Sometimes that's trailing information or not as real time. So we review that and validate that within the collaborative, but then we also continuously survey the collaborative members to make sure that we are reacting to their needs immediate in the real time, but also into the future too. We're not doing this alone, so we've engaged some consultants from American Institute for Research to develop some of the framework and implementing it in the San Antonio region. So they've done this and assisted in other regions, Michigan, Tampa, and a few other regions. And we also are leaning on our partnership with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and continuing to learn from them and having mentorship from them in our implementation. We can go to the next slide. Again, still on the why a little bit, but we'll highlight these really quickly. The shared value, it creates shared value for the employers that are part of a collaborative. So one of the best things about these collaboratives is it doesn't matter the size of the employer. It is what the roles that you have, and they often overlap no matter if it's a small employer or a large one. So we want to make sure that voice is the shared value of the talent pipeline management, so that the smaller employers have that voice to go to education providers to make sure that they are improving or refining the training that they have available for new workforce, incumbent workforce, and upskilling or other opportunities. It also builds a competitiveness with our education providers to make sure that they are serving the needs of the employers and not just based around what decisions they're making internally for the curriculum or classes that they may offer. Again, it leans into that improved leverage. Again, no matter the size of the company, they have a voice, and then measurable success as well. So we focus on ROI with the employers. So how are we improving their hiring capabilities through the efforts? How are we expanding career awareness? How are we becoming more regional with their approach? And all that happens because of the collaborative efforts. We can go to the next slide. If you could click one more time, I think this has some animation to it. All right, perfect. So this is that supply chain model that I mentioned earlier. So traditional supply chain model at the top, you got the raw material and then it ends with the customer. And there's a lot of points in between that can be improved or refined to make sure, one, reduce time, improve quality, whatever it may be on a product level. So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation has taken that to the talent supply chain and created a similar supply chain model within talent development. So students and workers being that raw material, and then the end customer being that employer. So how do we improve everything in between? So there's a lot of points in between that touch students, workers along the way, whether it's workforce agencies like Workforce Solutions Alamo, or education providers in our community, training providers, universities, colleges, community colleges. How can we improve the message within those providers? And how can we improve the quality of the training and quality of the products that they are presenting to the students and workers to make individual talent more workplace ready from day one when they reach that employer. So when they interview with the employer even, and how can they improve retention too as well along the way. So making that supply chain mindset in this is the real focus of talent pipeline management. We can go to the next slide. This is just showing that this is an initiative that's across the country right now. It has been in over 40 states. 19 different groups have implemented it throughout those regions. Over 2,000 employers have been part of a collaborative. This is the first time that talent pipeline management has been officially implemented in the San Antonio region. And it has been in Texas. There's some great learning that we're taking from the Houston area, where they've had success within construction and some skilled trades. So we're leaning on them, Greater Houston Partnership, to learn from them, but we're also learning continuously from these other states and across the country through talent pipeline management learning network that we are tapped into. We can go to the next slide. So here's the how. So we talked about the why we're doing it, the collaboratives, but here's the how. So it's a pretty, it's agile, as I mentioned, but there's also a pretty rigid process. The commitment from employers is about 9 to 12 months of commitment of going to meetings on a 4 to 6 week time frame, and then there's some homework that happens in between too. So it's not to be taken lightly. They have to identify the right individuals to be part of the conversation, to be part of the collaborative, and give that commitment over time, because like many things, as much as they put into it is as much as they will get out of it too as a collaborative. So 6 strategies that outline that. In strategy 1, the collaborative will identify 2 to 3 critical roles that spread over all the employers that are part of that collaborative. So what makes a critical role? It could be that it's a high quantity need. It could be that there's extensive training or high level training that's involved with an individual role. It could be that there's just generally not the talent in the region. So we try to identify those critical roles as a collective, and then use that as the guiding focus for the collaborative. So we're not trying to solve the entire workforce need for an employer or for an industry. We're just trying to take some of those initial roles, focus on those, improve those talent pipelines, and then revisit additional roles once we have success on that. Strategy 2 through 5 actually is more of the homework phase. So we're still meeting in person on a 4 to 6 week basis, but this is really where they're diving deep into those critical roles. So identifying the skill sets, the competencies, reviewing job descriptions, reviewing training that's available or resources that are available currently to serve those roles in our community, and figuring out how it could be improved, figuring out how it can be streamlined. Deciding for a job description, company A might have one job description, company B might have another, but they're for the same role. So where can we simplify this and make it easier for the workforce and job seekers to understand those roles, to be prepared for those careers, and be ready to enter those on day one. So, and then for strategy 5, that becomes an opportunity to meet with the education providers and training providers. We bring them into the room at that point to learn from the employers and refine the training, education that they may have, or just general services that might be available for those critical roles. Strategy 6 is continuous improvement and revisiting of the collaborative efforts and the goals. So this is just kind of that long-term re-meeting and refining anything that might have changed from what the deliverables were initially for the collaborative. This could also be revisiting what the critical roles are and starting the process over for that. So for just as an example, we've introduced talent pipeline management for manufacturing, healthcare and bioscience, construction and skilled trades. And then next week, we're actually introducing it for finance, IT and cybersecurity. And then we're partnering with Region 20 on their efforts for education too. So for manufacturing, we have we're about halfway through the process for manufacturing. We started in May 2022. And we initially identified 2 roles that would be a focus of the collaborative. And those are entry-level production roles and then maintenance roles. And so we have worked to refine the understanding of the competencies and skill sets for those roles, looked at some job descriptions and looking to streamline those right now. But in those conversations, what we also heard from the employers is that retention and career readiness is really an issue. So we dove deep into what's causing those issues. And it's really a lot of just career awareness and readiness that happens at the middle school level, happens at the high school level, even happens for adults. And it's just not understanding what their careers in manufacturing are really like. So where can we improve that? So one thing that we're doing next week, actually, with that collaborative is working to start developing candidate profiles for those roles. So what makes somebody successful in that role? What kind of background do they have? If they're already in the workforce, what career are they coming from or transitioning from into those manufacturing roles that will help them be successful? So we're visiting that with a collaborative. We have about 19 employers that are part of that manufacturing collaborative and contributing to those efforts. Eventually, we'll also visit with workforce agencies and even the high schools to make sure that their case managers or advisors are aware of what the employers are saying, where there's been shortfalls on retention, where the improvement could happen for interview prep, for resume prep, for just basic skills prep. Maybe it's make sure that everybody meets this new certain level of math skills if they're applying for an entry-level production role. There's also opportunity to create reskilling or upskilling for incumbent workers too as well. So if that is visiting with education providers to make sure that those opportunities are there so that they don't have to do it internally, that is something that we're going to explore as well. We can go to the next slide. We'll go through this one quickly, but this is the traditional shared responsibility from the suppliers and the employers. So suppliers being education providers, workforce agencies, high schools, whatever it may be. They have typically been leaned on for career awareness, career exploration, career preparation, and employers haven't taken as much of a lead on some of those things. But then the employer is fully responsible for upskilling or retention. And I just mentioned with that collaborative for manufacturing is we're trying to mesh those a little bit and see where employers can influence that career awareness and guidance and exploration. Maybe it's through more job shadowing, internships, work-based learning opportunities that provide exposure. Maybe it's just doing mock interviews to make sure that somebody is prepared for that. But then the opposite side, suppliers being involved in that upskilling and retention aspect too. Where can the professional development happen outside of the internal employer and become shared value with the education providers or workforce agencies? We can go to the next slide. Next two slides just kind of round up what I've said. It's really that shared value amongst the collaborative. That's the biggest opportunity, that one voice for all, and leading to those conversations with education providers to improve classroom curriculum that's already in existence or build new ones that are necessary for the roles today, but also the roles in the future too as well. It's giving those clear signals to the training providers and education providers so that they don't have to just guess, but they have that opportunity to be involved in the process. There is also, hopefully, the employers will step up into a role where they lead some of that training too as well. So we want to make sure that the education providers, training providers have the right people in the classroom or the right voices for what the jobs are like today. If technology has changed, that they're aware of that. If there's new processes or new equipment that needs to be taught, that the employers are part of that conversation and part of leading that effort. We can go to the next slide. This, again, just wrapping up some of that information, talking about the data granular aspect, our efforts and partnerships with ARR, U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and how we continue to improve and continuously improve the process. Again, one of the biggest aspects is getting that real-time data from the employers, continually surveying them and validating what we have and what we're working towards. So my contact information is available if you'd like to learn more about talent pipeline management or how we're implementing it in the San Antonio region, or how you could partner with us too in our efforts. And we are going to be sharing out on a quarterly basis, starting soon, some of our findings from the collaborative. So halfway through manufacturing and healthcare, we're going to be sharing that out as a TPM snapshot for our region in the next month, and continue to do that for all the collaboratives as we roll them out in the future. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Maman. This is all very fascinating to me. This is the time that we begin the discussion among the committee members. And I'll just ask one question of both of you gentlemen. How much does low literacy impact your ability to execute your plans, either in the pipeline or through the agencies?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, that is definitely an issue, especially when we're looking at, populations that are potentially maybe immigrants, that live in the city or in the region. I think what you will find is that employers are willing to work with individuals, because we literally have, a few thousand job openings and we're creating jobs at a faster rate than we can place people. So there is a willingness from employers to work closely with, AEL or organizations like us to be able to, have enough sort of like work-based literacy so that people can be functionable.
And I'll chime in from the employer perspective. From our engagement with employers, is hireability. That becomes a major issue for day one hiring of an individual, or just general retention too as well. So we'll lump that into some of those 21st century basic skills, and that becomes an issue just for a broader workforce if somebody doesn't have those literacy skills, and it's for all industries too as well. We hear that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned a 20% poverty rate in San Antonio. The low literacy rate is over 30 to 35%. So there's a big correlation there. I'll open it up to the committee for any questions you might have or any discussion. Is everybody back with us? Johnine?
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty over here. I apologize. I get kicked off and it freezes. So I'm not turning my camera on because I think that'll help. These were great presentations. Thank you so much to Mr. Lopez and to Mr. Mammon for sharing your what's going on in your neck of the woods. I have a question though for Mr. Mammon. Are you finding that your employers in your area are working closely enough with your AEL providers so that they can determine those skills that are needed, and they can actually write what we call like contextualized instruction, so that we're helping to build those soft skills and those skills that are needed to get them in even at an entry level? So are you having a good luck in your area with those employers working directly with the AEL in your area?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say no, that they don't know about the resource or opportunity to be able to do that, to refine those skills for a potential workforce or existing workforce. And that is where we could provide those opportunities through the talent pipeline management, communicate that through those efforts, through those collaboratives, and then also make that connection so that they could be part of that process, so that they could be part of that refining of the needs.
Yeah, and I'm only asking because I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's that communication, right? The connection, making sure that they understand that we're all in it together, and we're there to, support each other. And so thankfully, like in our area, I'm from the Tarrant area, we've been able to really connect with some of our employers through our workplace literacy, and then take it beyond just that basic service of ESL or a high school equivalency, moving it more into the skills that are needed in order for the employees not only just to maintain or keep their current position, but actually be marketable to move up into a promoted position or provide, you know, a better support to the employer. So, but not every, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's not enough discussion out there yet with the employers directly on how AEL can really kind of fit in and implement or can augment and supplement, you know, to help support their needs. So just curious, like how you guys are very big in San Antonio. So this was curious.
Yeah, and I would also add that employers just get confused by the resources.
Yeah.
So everything blends together for them and they don't know, you know, right hand from left hand on who's doing what. So it's on us too to communicate that better to them. So any way that we can share that we can get, you know, just a round table with employers too as well is one way that we can do that. But making sure that the employers are aware of what really the opportunities and not expect them to know, you know, the alphabet soup of resources that are out there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Great. Leslie, thank you so much for bringing these gentlemen to our attention. Do you have any comments or questions that you would like to ask?
I don't think I have any questions for Christopher or Adrian at this time. I think I'm very fortunate to work in the same region as both of these gentlemen and to be heavily involved in their initiative. So I know we're running tight on time, so I'd like to make sure we have time for the other committee members in case they want some clarification on the presentations, but thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Brenda, any questions or comments from you?
At this point, I don't have any questions. Both presentations were just wonderful. They answered, you know, brought up so many things that I just cutting edge and that I'm so interested in locally for our own program. And I want to thank Mr. Lopez and Mr. Mammon for all of your information and look forward to you know, having you as a point of contact, of course, in the future. And I just, you know, I love the idea of bringing the workforce solutions, just bringing everything to where the people are located. Like you say, just I think that's wonderful. I love all of your community outreach and working together. That's wonderful for both programs, and very interested on anything dealing with employers. That's something that we are working with, but I would say that's an area where we are working now to build the employer support, and like you say, just to kind of educate them on what's available. So just thank you so much, both of you, for what you're doing in the field and for your presentation today. It was just very enlightening for me, and I think it's definitely a benefit to AEL. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Brenda. I do have one more question for Mr. Lopez. In our committee discussions, and Johnny touched on it, we talk about how hard it is to reach outside our silos, whether you be a CBO or, you know, whatever your defined work is. How did you bring all of these players together in a way that you could manage it going forward?
Yeah, I'd like to say alcohol, but that's probably not the right, you know, proper answer. No, I think it's just about, you know, one thing is when I was talking about trust amongst community members with these agencies, the trust also sort of factors in between us as CEOs of these organizations. And so, you know, many of these folks were actually on first name basis and we're friends. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And yes, we do have a few beers here and there, you know, but I think it's based on that. And that's why I mentioned this issue about the principals, because this issue of, I mean, too often, too much, sometimes in San Antonio, we're like extremely collaborative. But then when, you know, once we get to that point and then people start scratching their heads and start saying, okay, now what? And then there's a loss of accountability. And so that's why we said, look, we're going to work together. We're going to be honest, transparent, and accountable with each other. And there's no sort of like sacred cows as it relates to that. And so I think just working on those principles with trust involved, I think really does a lot to be able to bring those agencies together.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that for me, because that seems like a huge challenge. So congratulations on that. We're out of time. As a committee, we didn't get as much time to discuss as we normally do. So I just want to let you know we'll be scheduling a special work session to kind of complete this discussion and begin work on our final report to the commission. And with that, thanks everybody. And Mahalia, I'll turn it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody that joined us today. Just a couple of next steps for our committee members. We have our annual report development. I think, Steve, that's the right choice. We can schedule a work session, take all the information that we learned both today and from the other presentations we've had throughout the year, and you guys can work on, you know, the formal recommendations. We'll also start developing our agenda for our next quarterly meeting, which will take place somewhere in the first quarter of 2023, if y'all can believe it. The year has flown by. In closing remarks, I just wanted to thank our panelists again. I took a lot of really great notes. So I am excited to kind of come back to you, Adrian, maybe in like a year or so. Let's see how it's going. You know, so many initiatives, and we're all familiar with this just as leaders. You know, it takes sometimes a lot of funding to kind of get things going and implemented. And then once you get the model down, you can start to kind of trim away. So I would be very interested to come back and kind of see how things are going and what some of the challenges have been. We've had several discussions on our advisory committee throughout this past year where we're really talking about how do we leverage funds. I think you mentioned you have like 1,400 nonprofits out there. Many of them are likely providing, you know, the same types of services. You know, same thing with adult ed. We are a TWC, a federally funded program. There's lots of programs out there. We certainly are not the monopoly, but how do we really leverage all of the great skills and resources that we know exist in the communities to better support our customers? So I'm very interested in seeing how things turn out. Also just, I think a big takeaway for me today, my ears kind of perk up when I hear work-based learning, because I think about our adult ed students. And, you know, there's just so much information that we provide to them prior to them kind of re-entering or entering into the workforce or trying to, you know, make a career pathway, and just thinking about the benefits of having work-based learning or internship opportunities for our adult learners. So we, I think, have you know, really tried to do our workforce preparation, but now I'm starting to see that maybe there's just so much more out there that we could potentially be doing to prepare our adult learners for the workforce here in Texas when it comes to hands-on training and really working with employers and what those milestones and benchmarks really are for them. So thank you so much to everyone for the discussions today. It was very insightful for me. And keep an eye on to be determined when we'll have our next AEL advisory committee. And as always, thank you so much to our committee members for your time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody have a happy holiday.
You too.